Chapter 2. Thinking Ahead to Adventure. Zolan's Perspective. A few days later, I was standing outside our apartment complex when Artis walked right up to me and said, "Hey, I was wondering if you wanted to, I don't know, hang out? You're the first person I've met that doesn't hate my guts. Unless you do hate my guts. I couldn't blame you if you do." It was kind of sad, really. I couldn't help but feel sorry for him. I told him, "Sure, I'll hang out with you. But who's Ketty?" "That girl I was with last time," Artis said. "I don't think she said her name was Ketty," I said, a little confused. "It's some weird rule," Artis said, "about how Veltkinder names work. I don't remember." Veltkinder? Could this be the Volt Condor new father had mentioned? Curious, I asked him, "What do you know about the Veltkinder?" "Not much," Artis replied. "Just what Ketty's told me. And she doesn't know much either, since she was raised in Potestum. All I really know is both our people are still pretty bitter over the war. I know if my parents gave a crap about anything I do, they'd hate knowing I'm hanging out with a Veltkind. And Ketty has told me that if her parents ever found out about me, they'd freak out big time." There was a brief pause, then Artis said, "So, what do you want to do?" I thought about it for a few moments. What would I want to do with my free time? Then, I got a perfect idea. Back in my homeland, my best friend was my cousin Viteria, and there was one thing we really loved doing. "Let's go on an adventure," I said. "Okay," Artis said. "How does that work?" "Simple," I replied. "What's the one thing all adventurers go on quests to find? Treasure, of course. Let's look around and see if we can find some treasure." So Artis and I took a walk around the city, looking to see if we could find anything interesting. I knew we probably wouldn't find anything that great, but it was all about the fun of pretending. Heck, on one of my adventures with Viteria, a jar of cookies was a treasure. After a while searching, we spied an elegant marble statue. It was just lying there in the middle of the street. "Now that's treasure if I ever saw it," I said excitedly. Artis and I both tried to move the statue, but it was too heavy even for both of us. We sat down and panted, exhausted. Then I got up and said, "I can do this, no problem," and used magic to lift the statue without even touching it. "Wow," Artis said, a little stunned. Even in his dull monotone, I could hear a hint of amazement. "You can use magic?" he asked. "Sure," I said. "Can't you?" "No," Artis replied. "Not many people here can use magic. The first time we saw it, it was being used by Veltkinder mages in the war, so we thought magic was a weapon of war, and that's how we've seen it ever since. The only really good mages are all in the army. Some ordinary people can do a few simple tricks, but nothing that great." "Huh," I said, intrigued. "Magic was pretty common where I came from." "And where did you come from?" Artis asked. Then we were interrupted by the sound of people running toward us and shouting, "Stop, thieves!" There were two men. One of them had dark hair and wore a black tunic. The other wore a white tunic and had light hair and a beard, which I guess meant he was a Veltkind Potestan. Come to think of it, I hadn't seen many bearded Potestans before. "What? We're not thieves!" I exclaimed. "Ha!" the bearded man said. "How stupid do you think we are? We see you trying to make off with the master's new statue." "What's this about my new statue?" I heard an elderly voice say. An elderly-looking man approached at a leisurely pace. He had gray hair and wore a purple toga over a white tunic. "Signor Constantos," the dark-haired man said, "we caught these little rats trying to steal your new statue." "That's not true," I said, panicking a little. "There was no one around when we found it. We didn't know it belonged to anyone." Constantos walked up to me and knelt down so he could look me in the eye. "And did it never occur to you that it might belong to someone?" he asked. His voice was serious, yet gentle and grandfatherly. I guess not, I said. But now that I know it does, I promise we'll leave it alone. I'm sorry we almost took it. Gah! There I went again, acting without thinking. Of course something that valuable had to belong to someone. I should have thought of that before I did anything. Well, Constantos said, it looks like no harm has been done. As long as you've learned your lesson, I'll let you go. As for you two, he said, turning to the two men, what were you thinking? Leaving my prize statue out in the middle of the street where anyone could take it? We were just taking a little break, the dark-haired man said, desperately trying to explain. Several years later, I was sound asleep in my bed when I woke up to what sounded like a crow dying next to me. As I regained consciousness, I realized it was Zara standing next to my bed going, meow, meow. Still half asleep, I asked, what are you doing, Zara? Waking you up, Zara said, like a cat does, meow. Too tired for this, I said, cats don't wake people up, Zara, roosters do. Oh, okay, she said. Then she started mooing. Ugh, she's hopeless. I finally opened my eyes and looked out the window. I saw that the sun was only just starting to rise. What? I exclaimed. It's barely even daytime. Why did you wake me up so early? Because, Zara said, I really want to go on our adventure today. It wasn't like this would be the first time the four of us, me, Zara, Artis, and Ketty, all hung out together, but it would be the first time we did anything really adventure-y. A wealthy family had hired us to take care of a pest infestation in their house. It wasn't exactly my idea of fun, but we were getting paid to do it, so I couldn't complain. Besides, battling fearsome monsters for treasure? That's exactly what real adventurers do. Finally, it felt like we were getting to go on a real adventure together. So we got Artis and Catty and went to the house. Zara, Artis, and I still looked pretty much the same way we did when we first met, but Catty had changed her appearance significantly. She didn't have that light blue dress or those braids that she did the first time we met. Instead, she wore a white shirt and dark blue skirt that I'm told looked more like traditional Veltkindish clothing. She also swapped the braids for pigtails that started at the bottom of the back of her head and came over her shoulders to drape over much of her upper body. We had all gotten big sticks to use as our weapons to fight the monsters. When we opened the door to the house, we saw that the creatures inside were a lot more monstrous than we were expecting. They looked a lot like ordinary beetles, except that they were huge, almost as big as our heads. I think we're going to need bigger sticks, Zara exclaimed. Needless to say, things didn't go well. We really struggled fighting the beetles, and things were at their worst when they chased Zara right out of the house. The other three of us went out to help her. Zara sat down safely outside the infested house and screamed. Why do I have to be so helpless? She shouted. Why can't I be strong so I can help too? She slammed her fist on the ground. The ground shook when her hand hit it, and we saw that she had actually cracked the stone in the road. Was that magic? Zara said. I can use magic! She laughed, full of joy. She had never actually learned how to use magic. My parents started teaching me when I was 6, and that's how old Zara was when we fled our homeland. I know there's magical potential inside all of us, but it usually takes a lot of training to be able to use it. Reinvigorated, we all went back inside the house. The beetles quickly surrounded Zara, and I went over to help her. No, she said. Please, let me do this. I can handle it. My heart told me to help her, but my head told me to listen to her. I figured I had spent enough time listening to my heart and decided to listen to my head this time. Zara used magic to summon a powerful gust of wind that sent all of the beetles around her flying into walls. It was amazing seeing what she could do even without having any training. With the help of Zara's magic, we were able to vanquish the monsters that had infested the house. By the time we finished, it was already getting late, so we all headed back to our homes. While Zara and I were heading back home, Ketty suddenly approached. Hey, Zolin, she said. I really liked getting to work together with you. It was Nice. Yeah, I said. I thought it was nice too. Zolan, Ketty said, what I'm trying to say is... And then, out of nowhere, she just kissed my cheek. I was too stunned to say or do anything. The silence was finally broken by Zara saying, should I leave you two alone? No, Ketty said. I should be getting back home now. See you later, Zolan. A few days later, Ketty and I met alone in a field outside the city. It was actually the first time I had ever ventured outside the city. It was really exciting. We just lay on the grass and talked for a while. Finally, the topic of conversation became what we wanted to do with our lives. I really like going on adventures, Ketty said. The way I see it, adventurers travel all around the world, righting wrongs and helping people wherever they go. That's what I've always wanted to do, find a way to be able to help people. And I think adventuring is the perfect way to do it. Just the other day, we helped that family with their pest problem. Can you just imagine making our living this way? Yeah, I said enthusiastically. We'll work together to make the world a better place.